Gonna be honest, guys. I don't stand for it. I don't. I will not stand for any sort of illegal gameplay or maneuvers of any kind. No illegal maneuvering. None of it. Cheaters don't prosper. And as long as I'm here, there will be no cheating in this league. None of it. I'm not going to have it, guys. I'm putting my foot down.
Get him, Sheriff AVRL.
For the children. For the children.
Okay? Florida Mayhem, you cheating team, you. I'm looking at you. Keeping my eye on you. Bunch of cheaters in that team, you cheaters. Anyway, it was actually pretty cool, though. I actually thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But, yeah. No more of that, though, guys. No more shenanigans. No more cheesing.
No more fun.
No more fun. Fun police
no
detected.
fun. This is a sport. No fun.
True.
You don't get to do that in my game.
We did try to be the NFL, and we all know what that stands for. The No Fun League.
Only satisfaction?
Listen, the amount of money that the league makes, I couldn't give a flying fuck how much fun they have. It's just, you know what I'm saying?
True.
Sure, yeah.
So, anyway, let's talk about our first topic. PGL Major Antwerp. What do we think of this? Personally, a little bit upset that Renegades already got knocked out.
Ah, lucky the homers are gone.
I saw a Reddit comment on because, like, of course, the broadcast quality was like part of the issue this weekend, and like someone posted on Arcow that the major is being cast at 4K. And one of the top Reddit comments in that thread replying to something, like when I was watching, I saw like 50 upvotes or something. And the comment was, I tuned in and someone looked at an angle for 20 seconds, then the round was over and everyone cheered. I don't get this.
Everyone cheered.
Yeah.
But at least they're not cheating in that league, huh?
True. Well,
Competitive
I don't know.
integrity.
Ask those coaches. Ask those coaches. That's
Unless there's a spectator bug, in which case, yes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They did do that.
They did do
well, you know, Asian Valorant, a lot of cheating in Asian Valorant that goes undetected.
Oh.
My favorite comment, my favorite, not even a comment, it was the title of that thread. It was just the premise of the thread. The entire existence was funny to me because it was like, see, Counter-Strike can stream in 4K. There's no excuse. I'm like, there never has been. Like, when? What do you mean? Like, when has there been an excuse? Like, we all know it's possible to stream in 4K. Overwatch League knows it's possible to stream in 4K. We fucking had that years ago. It's like, this is not a new discovery. It's like, I don't know. It's like someone just discovered fire. It's like, guys, we have fire now. Cooked food. There's no. There's just no excuse. You know, you must cook your food. No excuses now. Come on, guys. It's like, what the. We fucking know. What do you mean? Like you haven't made a discovery here. Like we all know you can stream in 4K. Like what was the point? I don't get it. Like,
dude, like one of the most successful strategies to get people to like you is the dunk. You know, the piling on. You see, like that's basically like that's also what we
do that weekly, Yiska. I do that weekly.
No, like what you do is you're down there first on the pile. You got the rubber, okay? And everyone else jumps on top and they get all the social credit, the brownie points, while you're suffocating on the bottom. You know? Like, you die on hills so others can stand on top of you. I know that. I'm
just a selfless person, you know? I'm here to serve. Hey, I plant the trees for which I know the shade is not for me. You know? Yeah, I'm just...
But you're throwing a lot of shade at the same time too, though.
I know, exactly. This does get deeper.
Double entendre.
It gets deeper.
There we go.
So, yeah. No, to be honest, guys, I said this already, but, you know, just in case, like, something weird happens tonight. I forgot we had a recording, so I did have a bit to drink. I'm a little bit drunk. What it is. It is what it is.
It's one of those. Those are the best episodes historically.
It is. They are quite good.
To which my critics would say, like, aren't you drunk every episode with some of your takes? I'm like, yeah, but no, this time, like, I actually am. So, you know.
This time it's with passion.
This time it's
time's real.
alcohol.
Holy crap.
Before it was hubris.
Mm.
So, yeah, PGL's happening. MSI's happening. Is there any other esport that happened last week? Any other esport that's been happening?
I think Overwatch was on, but
Oh,
I'm unsure.
Shit. Crazy.
Sometimes when the stream worked.
Hey, didn't we do a co-stream? Oh,
We
shit.
did. We did. If you caught that live, you're the real one. Maybe we'll do another one. Who knows?
If they have
Sorry, Sideshow already leaked the ins and outs of that one. So truth is, we don't know when another one's going to happen.
Nope.
So when it happens, we'll see you
You'll
there
know.
probably. If we, assuming all goes well, we'll see you there.
Yeah.
It
It was fun. It was a good time hanging out with chat.
Yeah.
It obviously wasn't ideal times for
No, it wasn't.
the
It really
majority of anybody.
wasn't. You just say me. It was not an ideal time for me.
It was like but o'clock in the morning for you.
Yeah, man.
That was
They're pretty good this year in Europe. Like, yeah, like I'm still staying up like until 3 a.m. on a Sunday and get to work at 8 a.m. again. I mean, this sucks a little, but it was way worse during the Hawaii weeks, man. Never bring that shit back. Like, that just ruined my social life for a while. Like, at some points, it actually was so bad that it then turned good because I could go out with the others, like, just to like go to bars, don't drink anything, come home at 4 a.m. and interview the Dallas Fuel.
yeah.
Like,
Dude, your social life is going to see every new movie, and then sometimes just like not even watching the movie or like doing something else.
yeah, he's just listening to a podcast
it's-
about like Isaac
yeah,
Asimov.
yeah.
yeah, no, that's actually how you should describe it. It's I'm listening to podcasts in a theater environment. That's usually what I do.
So what you're doing is you're paying to listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
I have a movie subscription where I pay $23 a month and I can go into as many movies as I'd like. But I'm paying $20 of food every time, so I guess it's not that cheap.
See, jokes. Yeah, got him.
They
Jokes on you.
gotcha.
So, 231. We actually do have things to talk about. Things happened.
Yes.
231. Brought to you. Was it any other small bits and pieces? Oh yeah, we got a live game between Dallas and Houston. I'll bring that up in a second. What else happened? Yeah, we know the stream quality is bad. Yeah, we know.
True.
Now maybe this will be the fun part when APAC starts up again, whenever that happens, and the Billy Billy production is doing that again. The stream quality should be pretty damn good, hopefully, because they had no issues last year.
True.
So
Let's hope, yeah.
if all goes well, the APAC stream quality should be decent. So got that going for us. Go on, Joe. You had something?
Oh, I think it's important to give a shout to the league. I think we'd be a little remiss, naming the Rookie of the Year award after Alarm.
True.
Rest in peace. Always remember. Couldn't think of a better recipient of such an honor.
Yeah.
And you did a good league. You did it good. Thumbs up.
Yeah. Agreed.
And obviously, thank you for letting us co-stream.
Yes.
New desk looks pretty good.
Yeah, I love the truck. Truck's pretty
Does look
good.
good. Truck is
Ever
decent.
roasted me about the fake trees in the background? I was staying corrected.
And honestly, it's just good to see the league back in the game, starting again.
Yeah.
So
it's
without
nice
further
to be
ado,
mid-season.
231, brought to you by. What's this first one? Avril Vista Baby. Nice. Battle Crab, Refined Bean, Bronze Butt Buhal, Chari, Commissioner Picasso, Chris R34444, Casher67, Lolshin, Pork Chop Sammy, Rick Zane, Volamel Smooth Nuts, and Your Misery. And thank you to our co-stream viewers as well, if you join us on that the opening day. Wow, I mean, we finally get to see real 5v5 professional play. I'd obviously already caught scrims well in advance, way before, but I actually hadn't seen scrims during the beta. I only watched during the alpha, so I was also kind of excited to see how things were going to develop, who's playing what now, how things were going to go. The viewing experience is maybe slightly easier for me because I'd already watched 5v5 and kind of got a feel for how it was going to play out in terms of what parts of the map were going to be the most interesting and where things were going to happen, and what comps people were going to run, and how the pacing was going to be. I mean, I still have some concerns about the pacing in 5v5 so far. I'm in a weird place with 5v5 because I said this on my stream, but I was like, I initially hated the idea of 5v5. I was like, no, you can't do that. That's ridiculous. I remember when Yiska was like, oh, guys, what about 5v5? I'm like, that's bullshit. There's no way. That sounds awful. Don't do that. But then they did. And then I 180'd. I was like, actually, this is pretty good. I think the idea of 5v5 is really good. And I think that'll be, really refreshing for the game. It'll do X and Y things for the gameplay loop, which is really important for skill expression, etc.
Yeah.
Now that we have it, and it's been some time, and I've had a bit of a chance to rest on it, I don't know, man. I'm kind of on the fence again because the viewing quality of 5v5 is a little bit. It's rough. It's really hard in some cases to watch, which goes against the entire goal of having it in the first place. Because it was meant to be making it easier to watch, and it would have been easier to watch if we had more of a front to back slow meta. You know, sadly, I have to bring this up, but if we were watching double shield, or in this case, solo shield, or in this case, just like, I don't know, any sort of like slow pick based hit scan comp, which you see a little bit on Escort when you have those Widowmaker duels, those are the most watchable games.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to see who the pop off player is going to be, where they're going to pop off from, and where the action is going to take place, and follow everything that's happening. Whereas 5v5, especially on Control, like Control Koth is hard to watch on its best day anyway, just generally speaking. But now in 5v5, it is just like, its magnitude is more difficult to watch. I remember with it was the Boston Glads game. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I was genuinely struggling to follow. And, I know some other people have said like, oh man, I'm finding 5v5 a little bit hard. And then there's me, like someone that's been with the game since day one that normally analyzes to quite a high level. And I feel like I was still following along, but I was following along on the HUD in the kill feed and not what was actually happening in the game. So I was following along in the way where like you could entirely remove the gameplay and only reveal the HUD and kill feed to me, and that's how I was following, which is a problem. Like, that's problematic. You can't have that. So because I watched the Dr. Lupo co-stream. I watched a little bit of that.
I think it will. I think it will improve. I think that's just probably a teething problem of like us not seeing the patterns yet, and also the teams playing more chaotic than it probably eventually will be. I feel like a lot is just like limit testing at the moment, and I will say maybe it's also a little bit. I feel like there's a distinct difference between new maps and old maps. I feel like push is pretty chaotic because here's.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to claim this phrasing because Harsha told it to me. And he said push is ARIM with flanks.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah. No, actually that makes a lot of sense. The more I think, because I play ARAM, or the non-League of Legends people are like, what's ARAM? It's a single lane. First of all, it's League of Legends. It's a single lane. It'd be like if you only played mid lane and you just run up and down mid lane. And it's a 5v5, you run up and down mid lane, and same as regular League of Legends, you destroy the tower, you destroy the base. And now where I'm like, dude, Harsh is kind of right, because push is just like ARAM with flanks, because you are just playing, at the end of the day, one big lane where the push bot follows, and you have to get to the end of the map, or try and get to the end of the map, and in essence, quote unquote, destroy the enemy base by pushing to the end. That's a crazily apt comparison. That's wild.
Yeah. It's also like, it's very hard once the ARAM team is in your base to push it back to their base and like win from there. Even though the mechanic is a little bit different because there's resource differences and they are not as as permanent in Overwatch. There's ult advantage, but there's not item advantage that lasts longer. But yeah,
you know what it is. You know why it's actually worse than ARAM? First of all, I enjoy ARAM. I actually just played a few games tonight. But a drunk ARAM.
Huh?
Goes well. I won a few of the games. I dominated a couple. The thing about ARAM is like it feels fair and finishable and completable. It has to be, obviously, because you have to finish the game. But like normal League of Legends, you get deep enough into the game after 20 minutes or however long, the respawn timers get long enough that if you lose a team fight, you lose the whole game because it takes too long to respawn. Now, if you were to really one-to-one ARAM and push as much as possible, it would be like playing ARAM, but the respawn timers don't increase. And throughout the entire game, you just sit on 10-second respawns the whole time. So you're in your base, you lost your inhib, you've successfully defended somehow, and then you go back out to push, but the entire enemy team is just respawned in the next 10 seconds. And so you have to fight again, and then it's just nonstop. And if that was actually the case in real ARAM, I think it would be an infinite game. Like the game would be just infinitely long. You wouldn't. No one would ever win. And so then you'd have the same thing. Well, then you got to win based on distance, right? Whatever that means in ARAM. Which then probably would have exactly the same issues as push does now in Overwatch, where first team pushing advantage is pretty huge. Comeback mechanics are non-existent. In fact, the game actively works against you as far as comebacks goes. So the game actually actively makes it harder for you to make a comeback as mechanics of the map and game mode itself, which people don't even know about. So all of those things, pushes. I have a lot of push problems with push.
Yeah, I think it needs some work when it comes to like the viewing experience. I definitely sympathize. Like it is harder to follow. I'm a little bit more on, I think, Yiska's front. I think it is just like a teething problem. I think the OBS team's going to get better at looking at it. And I think I think by the end of the season, we're going to be able to compare and decipher. Granted, yes, it very much matters on what kind of meta we finish with. But I think there are going to be like tangible improvements, and I think it will become a little bit easier. But there are, to your point, Avril, like there are some things that are just like inherent about push, about the increase in flank potential that is difficult to capture on camera, and it is hard to follow.
It's not even the flanks. It's just like it's a combination of everything. It's also the fact that 5v5 right now does two things that does many things that contradict itself. For example, there is far more player precedent, individual, ability for skill expression, which is great. Like I've always wanted that. I'm a big champion for that. I think every player should have carry potential, should be able to make plays, right? That's good. That should be good for an esport. That should be good for the game in general, because you don't feel like you're being burdened by the skill of your team. You can, if you're good, you can do things yourself to give your team a chance to win. From a viewing perspective, I've started to realize maybe that's not a good thing, because as an observer, you can't watch it all. Now, in a 5v5 League of Legends top-down,
sure.
Oh, that's cool, because you see all 10 players. In a first-person 5v5 experience in a game like Overwatch, where any of the 10 players can make a play, I don't think you can observe it. So you're saying like, oh, the observers get better. Like, can they? Because fundamentally, the issue is no matter who you observe, any of the other 9 players can do something. So you're bound to just miss a ton of shit happening. And I realize this because, again, I go back to that Boston Glads game on Ilios, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening? And then they would do a replay where they perfectly cut between the things that happen. I'm like, oh, that's how it is. And then I'm there like, yeah, so if we watched it like this, we would all understand. But the problem is, no one's Nostradamus enough to be able to do that, because you literally can't predict who's going to do what. Because here's a legitimate gameplay loop that happens. One team's Soldier pops Visor, the other team's Genji pops Blade. Who do you watch? Yeah. Either one of them could make either one of them could just go off and win the entire team fight. You don't, at that exact moment in time, it is impossible to know who to watch. Flip a damn coin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally flip a damn coin. You don't know who the fuck to watch, and if you pick the wrong person, you've completely missed everything. But you don't know who the correct person is.
Yeah, no, I agreed. I think that when it comes to like observers getting better at viewing the game, I think they're going to be more comfortable with it to, at a higher rate, make those predictions. I think there is something to be said with the level of play that we're at right now, where I think I think Yiska's a little bit more charitable than I think there's just a lot of like loose play. There's kind of just this general, I wouldn't say decline, but it's just a little messy overall in terms of like coordination. So that makes it generally more hard to view or predict what's going to happen. But to your point, I would say yes. There's a lot of teams that you wouldn't expect to be uncoordinated that are very uncoordinated. And then yeah, to your point, like there is a lot of just like Q pressing, and there are those moments where like it is a 50-50, you're gonna get it wrong like half the time.
Yeah.
I think it is coordinated. I think it's perfect. I think it's fine though. I don't buy the like, oh, the teams don't know what they're doing yet. I think they do. I think they've been playing and scrimming this long enough. Most of the map strategies and the general ideas behind the comps, even one less tank, it makes sense. They're still the same. You still have the same archetypes of dive and brawl and poke, shield poke. You have the shield and you're poking. Those are all of that is the same. All the win conditions are pretty similar. It's just that like. So? It's just like, no, I don't imagine. I know so, Joe. I know so.
I mean, what I'm seeing is different. That's what I'm saying. I'm not seeing the same coordination that I would expect the Gladiators to have or the Dallas Fuel to have. Even, looking at like some of these games, like it is messy where it's like, okay, they're still getting their feet wet with this game, and it's not as like refined as it once was. It's going to be hard to watch.
It's messy because in this fast-paced dive compositions matchups, people are taking multiple fights at different parts of the map and doing their own things in different parts of the map. I don't see that as a lack of coordination. I see that as players trying to take advantage and trying to find angles to make plays. And the team isn't. I'm not saying you are saying this, but I just want to make sure we nip this one in the bud.
Yeah.
Which is that players playing away and separate from each other to address different goals and positionings that they are looking for to come together for a team objective ultimately is not a lack of coordination. That's just coordination being separated into different parts of the map. So some people may view that as like, oh, this is very uncoordinated. Look, everyone's everywhere. I'm like, no, but they're doing that on purpose. This is not solo queue where everyone's doing random. And I know people might think it looks like it's not. No. Hey, this is on purpose. This is by design. People go in these different directions. So I don't think that's uncoordinated, but I do think it is messy. I think it's messy as shit. And that's why it's hard to watch, because you also don't know where to watch. Like, do you watch a little side fight going on in the little corner over there? Or do you not? Like,
I think a great example of that was Washington Dallas on Gardens on Control. There's a lot of like fighting over like White Room, both soldiers flanking in, Genji's diving into Lucio coming into support. Like there is like two very clear skirmishes, and it's like what you're saying. Hey, where do you view? And it's not uncoordinated. It is very clear, and like there is a thought process to it, but there also are very clear examples of teams who we would trust with our life savings last year that are coming in doing just kind of really uncharacteristic things that I would say it's lacking in some areas, that things are not as clean as they once were. And I think that has to do a lot with how scrims have progressed and how this overall like meta of 5v5 is shaping out right now, because you do have to consider a lot. There are teams that are making adjustments, and it's not bad, but they're getting used to it.
What I'm saying is I think the game needs to slow down by a lot. And I think you have to force the development hand to slow it down. I don't know if that is...
Not mad at that.
You increase respawn times even more from 10 seconds to 12.
So you want like a more clear delineation between fights, so maybe that would help?
Absolutely, because you have... I don't want to see a situation where one fight goes on and different people just keep piling on in. And it's just like, what's going on here? Like, there's no clear break. Because even back in Overwatch 1, I remember seeing a lot more resets, like a lot more situations where, oh shit, we lost somebody, better reset.
Right.
Or any number of situations where a team would go for a reset. Like I'd see certain things happening on maps and certain picks happen, and I would instantly know it's a reset. and I'd call the reset in the cast immediately, and I'd be
Mhm.
seeing this team trying to reset, and that those breaks in gameplay are very important. Whereas
Agreed.
a lot of 5v5 gameplay that I've seen so far is just like constant, just bashing. They're just fucking going at each other nonstop. I'm like, bro, where is the resetting? Where is like the breaks in the gameplay? It just doesn't exist. So, and that makes that's like tiring to watch. It's super tiring. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
So I don't know. They got to slow down the gameplay. I don't know what it is. I think the DPS speed increase
Doesn't
sounded
help.
good, but
Yeah.
it's sped things up way too much. Yeah, I mean, dive has always been fast, but even in Overwatch 1 dive, I feel like there's been more breaks and more, setting up. There's
Mm.
just feels like there's less of that. It just feels like a lot more time to run in. See, I don't
Yes.
know.
See what happens. Yeah, no, I agree. Like there are some things I think respawn timers probably would be one of the. I think it would exactly give you what you want, but I think it in general would probably make gameplay a little bit less enjoyable if I had to guess. I think the more uptime
Oh,
you have as a player, the better. But
Joe.
um,
No one likes respawning. No one likes respawning. I know that. I
obviously.
know that. But the problem
Um,
is you can't see. Here's the thing: is like people will say, "Here's the duality of man." You ready? People will
mhm,
say it's like, "Oh, the game's deathmatchy. I don't want to play deathmatch." But then
yeah,
those same people will complain like, "Oh man, why am I just sitting in respawns? I just want to get back in the action." It's like, okay, did you know that if you want shorter respawns, you want to get back in the action? That's literally deathmatch.
deathmatch.
Welcome to
Yeah.
deathmatch.
Yeah.
It's you can't please everybody there 100%, and I get that.
You want to play a non-deathmatchy game? Boot up a game of Counter-Strike. You
Yeah,
die, you're out for the whole round. There's your non-deathmatch game.
yeah.
Enjoy.
It there are some things I think you're right. Like the role passives in general could be reviewed. I think like just general tuning of certain heroes could be looked at. And yeah, I would tend to agree. A slower game makes for a much easier watch, and um, yeah, I'm not mad at that. I don't like it.
Any other
Yeah.
observations, Yiska? Anybody about 5v5 in the game so far? Just general stuff.
I must say, I honestly like. I can't even. From my point of view, I had more fun watching the games, and I had more fun playing the game recently. So, I think what we will probably find out is like the importance. So, but especially now during dive, I think there
Mhm.
must be pretty significant differences in who you lose first.
Oh, for sure.
And I think we will probably find out that, like, probably losing a tank early is the worst that could happen. Like, if you actually bank the tank, now you're in deep, right?
Yeah.
I think generally speaking, maybe we just also need more support camps because it feels like, especially Ana. Like, as Ana, you're probably looking at the majority of the gameplay that's happening, and you're kind of the ball. Like,
Yeah.
everyone's sort of like trying to kill you.
Mhm.
But the thing is, like, we probably need to find out these quirks about it in actual like practicing those metas. So I don't know, maybe it's not the case, and maybe it even complexifies a little bit as teams sophisticate and get better at flanks and have better like situations happening at the same time where like you're sort of like trading blows more. But
Mhm.
I would think as metas develop, it gets more structured, not less. But maybe that's just not a feature of Overwatch 2. We'll see. But I'm hopeful it gets better, not worse.
Mhm.
Same. I mean, I think that can be addressed with multiple things. Like I said, maybe you address spawns again, or I don't know, new heroes that change up the meta, force different playstyles. This is another thing where I'm going to say something crazy. Get ready.
Mhm.
Um, I wish Old Orisa was still here because Old Orisa is like one of the perfect heroes that slowed down the game so that you actually have.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, but like Bunker was. It's equally boring, but also
Yeah.
easy. It's really easy and welcoming to
Mhm.
watch because it was
Yeah.
very clear what the strategies were and like how the game was going to break down. Whereas this whole quote unquote deathmatch thing people are talking about. Yeah, I mean, it looks that way because in our current 5v5 dive, you just have two teams flying at each other constantly. And you don't have resetting because you see a lot of teams, if they lose somebody, the response is, well, let's just get a counter frag as fast as we can, which I accept, like that's what you probably should do. But it means you just don't really have resetting. You just have teams running at each other repeatedly. So I don't know. Like I'm of the belief now that a good metas involve hit scans and involve heroes like Hanzo. And I would have put Soldier in that same boat, but he's such a flanker now that he kind of creates. I'm really glad he's been nerfed, by the way. And maybe the patch will change things. Maybe the patch.
Oh, for sure.
When we get to the new patch, whenever that's going to be, no more Soldier probably. Zen probably going to get a lot of playtime. Zen maybe competing with Ana for playtime is really important.
Sure.
So, yeah, I just think it's wild that I found the Sombra Ball Tracer meta to be more watchable than this, and that's what you got a fucking Wrecking Ball in there doing all sorts of crazy stuff. You got a Sombra that's literally invisible running around. Like I don't know, like that meta was a lot more watchable than what we have now, which I just on control it is just vomit on my screen. Like what is it?
Lots of just.
But then you get to escort and you see Arns and Violet or whoever.
Yeah.
Sorry, Arns and not Violet. Arns and Victoria having a Widow duel, and it's like, oh, this is
nice.
This is really good. This is really good to watch now. Like I can very easily tell what the hell's happening.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, I think. Okay, here's my Void Pill take. I think it might be less appealing to a certain level of sophistication of viewer, which, in my experience, having watched like Overwatch with an audience, is not average. Like, I think if you have on screen someone like Happy just popping heads off, and that happens more frequently, then you have produced a better viewership broadcast, because 85% of the people watching Overwatch do not have the desire to understand why a fight was won.
That's for replays and like for the desk
Just
or like to fill time.
Just my job as a caster to explain, which is what I do.
Yeah, for sure.
But
yeah, but
I don't know.
I think in terms of like individual plays that we saw, I felt like the pogs per minute in terms of like the entire broadcast was higher than we had last year. Like maybe it's just like, how memory works and me being more engaged with Webby5 and not, but I feel like I remember the Nero play, I remember the Happy play, I remember several Ultraviolet plays. I'm remembering someone plays. I remember
Mayhem TP plays.
Some illegal Overwatch maneuvers. Yeah.
So, and that happened probably less frequently. I don't think like I got out of a lot of match days on the average Overwatch League weekend and had the same amount of recollection of like interesting or like pop-off moments in terms of mechanic skill.
I enjoy playing the game. I think the game is super fun to play right now, legitimately. To the point where, like, going back to Overwatch 1, like, I don't even want to look at it, Yeah. But from a viewing perspective, once you dial that up to 11, like, what does that look like? And 6v6 was better to watch so far from my end, from what I get out of it. But
I don't hate that take. Yeah. From a purist perspective, it vibes with me big time, yeah.
Whereas like 6v6, it's probably bullshit to play, but it was a better viewing experience. Now we've done the opposite. We got a better game to play, but the viewing experience is just a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like we somehow we've like overshot and we just missed them. We didn't land on the Goldilocks. And I was just like, and I couldn't foresee it, and it's just like, damn it, I didn't think this would happen.
I won't lie. I would take the latter over the former any day of the week. I think we can invent ways to make the viewing experience a little bit more palatable Whereas like it's probably pretty hard to make the gameplay loop like fun.
Look, like even okay, I'm going to this is online format only thing. If our production is anyway like, you know, just record and select the right play and just give us like a feed delayed like for a minute or two.
That works until it doesn't.
Me. Yeah, it doesn't work in a live environment. Yeah, that's true.
No.
But then in a live environment, just have like a screen for each player and then you choose. I don't know.
But then you get like the old like XPeke, like the game is over, they've won, and like the feed hasn't caught up with them yet, right? Like, am I misremembering that?
Yeah,
I figured it out. I think they just need to use more top-down third persons. As much as I hate it.
Yes.
As much as I think that's like not the ideal way to view an FPS game because you can't appreciate the skill in first person when you watch in third person. I don't see another solution right now.
I like it on engages generally. Like for instance, I think what the first thing we got to do is your suggestion: longer spawn times, and then if you think about how we introduce each map, you have the top down every time at the start of the map with the icons, right? And then you see the setup, how the rotation is coming in, and what sort of like is the plan. Maybe we can do that. Maybe not for every fight, but for more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Maybe.
It would be an interesting one. I still am of the opinion that like they have to like expedite the command center back. Like give me however I want to watch the game. Go ahead and pay for it. If you don't like it, pay for it. Simple as. I don't know. I'd pay for it personally. So, I'm biased though.
I think the official word is that we're not going to have it this year, but of course Overwatch League teams have the. I'm saying
sure,
of course. Until yesterday I didn't know, even though it was official knowledge. But yeah, they have a replay viewer. My understanding is that it works pretty well with like some bugs, but you expect as much for a beta situation, right? I just hope they bring that back. I feel like a lot of the surrounding elements of the main broadcast last year, like Stats Lab, like replay viewer and whatnot, like that, I'm missing that.
Yeah.
And yeah,
some of the best community content came from using the replay viewer to like highlight and amplify and showcase some of the things that maybe the broadcast didn't catch, or better explaining why a team won a fight. Like it was in a way our little truth machine, and we got some little nuggets out of it, and it was good. Like I think that's like a missing part of this whole thing this season. It's going to be both the command center and like the replay viewer viewing the game how you want to, and granted on your time, which isn't as great as watching it live and having a cohesive and very streamlined viewing experience, but it's better than not having it, I suppose. I don't know.
Let's take a look now at some of the matches coming out from this week. So let's actually start a little bit of recap.
Yes.
We're not going to go through every single game. I think we're going to cover some highlights here and talk about the more overhead stuff. And then, some of the more macro storylines of what's been happening so far. Generally speaking, though, I think this first week had some quite turbulent results, very turbulent results in the sense of, Scrimbux and power rankings and who you thought was going to win. The middle of the table looking pretty spicy in terms of everyone rotating around, depending on who you think is meant to be middle of the table or not. Genuinely impressed by the fact that, okay, look, Vancouver and London still not looking the strongest, but they look much better than the previous years. They are capable of taking maps and threatening wins and at least giving us a competitive viewing experience rather than just falling over in the previous years, which I appreciate. Even that 0-3 versus Shock, even that Eichenwald was a little bit competitive. You want that. You want that in these games. I'm going to highlight and talk about one game in particular to start with, and that is the Dallas versus Houston Battle for Texas, live at the Techport Arena in San Antonio, in the heart of Houston, Texas, where the Dallas Fuel walked in and they got shook by all them Texan Houston fans rooting for the team in green. And Sparkle got nervous, and then they lost. And that's my analysis of that game. So
it was a banger. It was a fun one.
I think it will really, a couple things. One, it really highlighted the demand, the hunger for live Overwatch. No, I don't know, because it was like a 2,000 person event that got sold out. And I don't know if it was that way because it's been so long that everyone's just dying to come back, which I'm sure is part of it. Or, you know, I guess people really do. Not that it's surprising, it shouldn't be, that people really do want to see live Overwatch again. Because even prior to that, the Season 3 homestands were starting to really pick off. We saw the APAC homestands last year, and they looked pretty good.
Yeah.
In terms of people there. So, I mean, that was brilliant. I love that. I think it really kind of proved a point about live events, and I'm sure that teams, whether that be the Texan teams or the other teams, will be looking to do more. I know it's easier to do these in Texas because it's the state of the United States that doesn't believe COVID exists.
One of them.
But I don't know how easy or hard it would be to do live events in other states, but certainly in Texas, you're going to see more. I hope.
Yeah, I think it definitely benefits from having some regional rivalry, right? Like there's always the Dallas-Houston talk, like, oh, which one's going to be better? Like, I think the fans also play into that. So that definitely is benefiting them. Whereas, like, I don't know. I think it's something interesting to test the waters of like Vancouver or Toronto and be like, all right, what's the best team in Canada? Is that something that people genuinely like will come out to see? I don't know. That's the only other thing. Like, maybe there's like a tri-state thing if Philly was in NA, and then like New York, maybe there's some play there. I think they tried to pick that up in the past. Like, when it comes to like regionality playing a role, it seems like the Texan teams have a little bit of a bias there, or a little bit of an edge. But yeah, I would tend to agree. Like, live events definitely always a fun time, and I think it's just smattering them in and testing the markets, and not flooding everything with everything has to be a live event and a home stand. And that was always a concern of mine when it came to, what was it, 2020, pre-COVID, where it's like, are we going to show up for, Boston, Vancouver in stage 3 after seeing this like 4 or 5 times already? Like, I don't know if people are going to pay for that.
Yeah.
So having more, but fewer than anticipated originally, I think would be like the Goldilocks to use that.
You got to get to the stage where, you're doing a Formula 1 race and they're selling tickets for $1,000 each.
Yeah.
For a bullshit seat, and people just buying it. Somehow everyone's like, I'll pay $1,000 for that. Like,
that's
wild. But they do. So the actual game though, okay, 3-0. I know why you here. You want me to talk about the fact that Dallas lost to Houston. I put them I think 9th. Where did I put Houston? I think I put them 9th. One above Toronto and 10th. Which I thought was a pretty responsible place to put Houston, considering the issues on paper, that is. And now, also their issues displayed versus Toronto. Got them. Yeah, and I put Dallas really high. Everyone did. Everyone put Dallas really high. So, don't just come after me. Everyone put Dallas high. Before anyone says, like, oh, yeah, but you put them number 1. It's like, yeah, but we don't even know what the hell Shanghai's doing. So, Shanghai might as well not even exist right now. Like, trying to put APAC teams in this ranking, like, it doesn't even, it's completely pointless, but I did it anyway just for the laugh. Functionally, what does matter is that as far as North America goes, Dallas I had number 1, and so did everyone else, because even if you put Dallas in number 2 below Shanghai, functionally speaking, you still put Dallas in number 1 for NA. So really, we all did the same thing, and Dallas surprised everyone by getting crushed by Houston on that matchup. Couple things. Yeah, they said they were nervous. Sure, I buy it. I can believe it. I'm not going to, I'm personally not going to make excuses on their behalf. That they said those things. I didn't say those things. I felt like they got outplayed extremely hard. I felt like they just looked. I mean, I buy it because they just looked shook. They just looked like they weren't playing like Dallas. I made the comment that to me it felt like Dallas and Houston Freaky Friday and their identity swapped. Like Houston was as fast, decisive, super coordinated team with high mechanics, and then Dallas was just like shit in the bed. And usually Dallas is the super coordinated, high speed, high tempo, big teamwork and all these kind of this really strong team. And usually that's Dallas play like that, and Houston did that instead. So I was impressed that Houston were doing that, and kind of wondering what the fuck was Dallas doing? Like what is going on here? Edison did not impress me in that opening matchup as well. I felt like his soldier was lacking. It gave Pelican a lot of runway to work with.
I told you so.
And I don't. Well, I said that Doha was going to play soldier, so I don't know what the fuck they're doing. I mean, maybe Edison is better on soldier, and Edison looked much better versus Washington. I think. I didn't see the. I didn't see day 4 games. I was supposed to watch the day 4 games today, but I couldn't. So, I mean, full credit to Houston. They did everything right. All their players popped off way harder. Lastro's Lucio was much better than people expected as well. And that's always a question mark because you don't know when a team runs double flexible. You don't know how good their Lucio is because we're still looking at Gangnam Jin being like, all right, well, maybe there's more there. Maybe there's not. I don't know. It's not looking that good. So I think it was completely fair to have Houston where they were because they only have one tank. They don't have a main support. Looks like they lack flexibility. All these different things. And Dante comes out of the Doom, but then, the duality of man is people saying after the Dallas win, people are like, oh man, the Dante Doom it's so good. He's the best. Like, no team's going to beat this. And then Toronto lose to Houston lose to Toronto. And then the other side of the coin is like, oh man, they need to stop playing Dante on Doom. Like, this is too predictable. I can't believe they're still doing Dante on Doom. Like, fuck, please pick one. Which opinion is it? Which hot take do you want to put in there? You can't have both.
Keep in mind, you still had them 5th in NA, right? Like, that's still pretty high.
Yeah.
Implicitly.
Is it? 1,
very
2,
reasonable.
3, 4. Yeah, I had them 5th in NA. Like, people think because I put them 9th because I shoved in Fusion and Hunters and Soul and shit.
Yeah.
That I'm so down on Houston. They're top 5 in NA for me. Please, come on, stop.
You're still just in love with the APAC. That's the story that's being told. Not really that you're underrating the Outlaws. I think. If anything, like I had the Defiant over the Outlaws, just barely. Like then same tier break for me.
And you were correct, huh?
And
boom, done, got him.
The thing is,
Cha-ching.
I'm not going to claim anything because one of the more obnoxious situations this weekend was like, we have definitive proof of anything being proven wrong, and it's like 2 games, bro.
You need to translate that for me. That was like some Batman voice you just did there. I don't know what you said.
And some of you assholes like subtweeted me after game 1, bro. Like, come on, man. Keep in mind, you remember last year? You remember stage 1? You remember that team that went 2-2, barely snuck into Melee finals, and who won that shit in the end? You remember that team that actually on day 1 lost against the Houston Outlaws? I'm still not feeling it's disproven that Fuel might be the best team in the world just because they got blown the hell out by Outlaws. I think that's still entirely possible that we arrive at the end of the stage and they are the best team in the world. It is not disproven.
I
rewatched last year's game of Shanghai losing to Chengdu 0-3.
Yes, and it was.
And if you remember watching that game, or maybe if you're curious, just go watch it again. The Shanghai looked like shit.
They look so bad.
They got full held on Ike. They got fucking dumpstered.
They got full held by Torb.
And so they got full held by Jinmu Torb. Like, it doesn't get worse. So and if you knee jerk hard enough at that result, you're like, oh man, Shanghai are shit. Who would put Shanghai number 1? Okay, W. What a shit team. Like, I mean, everyone's gonna get blown out at some. I don't know. People lose games. Dallas always lose their opening game. I'm not trying to take anything away from Houston because I think they're much better than I probably gave them credit for. I still don't know if I'd put Houston above 5 because when I look at this, I think maybe now what people want is they would probably like it if Shock and Gladiators was shoved down the list and then Atlanta and Houston were shoved up the list, and then maybe Fuel like a middling in there or something. But can we really glean much out of Shock and Gladiators, considering the level of opponents they played against? People will say that because Gladiators lost one map to New York and one map to Boston, that means they're bad or something. I'm like, why? Like, I think people assume New York are like bottom tier. They're like absolute garbage. I had someone in my Discord was like, yo, I think New York could be the last place team in NA. I'm like, no way, bro. They're not. Bro, they still have to lose to London and Vancouver for that to happen. Like, fuck me, they didn't look that bad. Yeah, they got outplayed by Atlanta, but they didn't look. They looked bad compared to Atlanta because Atlanta are much better. But otherwise, I think New York are probably an okay team. They're just a mid team. There's nothing wrong with being a mid team.
I agree. Yep. I think the crown to the worst team probably in the Overwatch League by now, Vancouver.
That has to be after 1 week. Yeah. I mean, at least London has like a style that like works for them and like they're finding like their footing with, whereas Vancouver's like trying to do things.
Which one are you picking? London, Vancouver as your match of the week?
Hot me, Jesus. I did not find that very interesting. No. It, if anything, reinforced what I saw from London Shock, which I will still fight tooth and nail that London had a very winnable line on Ike, and it is very frustrating that that map played out the way it did. Yiska, do you have a map or a match preloaded, or do you want me to go?
I think, like, for me, it would have to be between Atlanta Reign and Florida or Justice against Toronto, and I think I'm leaning towards, like, I had the most fun with Reign against Mayhem, and like what it did
because Mayhem didn't cheat. That's why.
Yes.
I don't know. That Watchpoint Gibraltar might have as well been cheating. I will say. That one was rough.
I felt like I understood how someone can run alpha scrims and tweet publicly that flex support is in a good place, which Ultraviolet did. And then he played like that, and then I understood, okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like, if you're a god born to flex support. I think, like, he's probably... Yeah, I think he was the most impressive flex support this weekend. I think he understood the most what flex support is required of in Overwatch 2. I feel like a lot of the time, and I would love to see stats on that, but in my mind, very often, the tail or like the breaking point of each composition became Ana, because Ana or Genji, right? I think it's very hard to kill a main tank unless he fucks up and is like disjointed. I think it's pretty hard to get a soldier out of position just where they should position. Of course,
for sure.
Like, okay, if you're playing into Widow, that's maybe a little bit different and whatnot. I think it is. The second one I would expect to be in First Cuts would probably be Genji. Lucio is a fucking bulwark. He's like, basically, like, you lose sight of him and he comes around the corner like 0.5 seconds later with 100 HP more. So you basically have to effectively kill like 600 HP worth of like life.
Yeah.
So
people are like, oh man, I can't believe they nerfed Lucio. I'm like, really? You can't believe they nerfed Lucio? Okay.
Yeah, no. And so in my mind, like the two obvious breaking points is either you catch a Genji being like a little giddy and like maybe they mess up their dash resourcing in terms of like trying to get a finish, but they don't, and then now the Genji's too deep. Or like the actual tail of all compositions is the Ana. But the way Ultraviolet positioned in these fights and knew how to read, like, especially, like, someone's engages was a masterclass. And that's, like, it almost felt oppressive, man. Like...
Yes.
I felt like that shit was... Because there's so much lack of hard CC that... Man, that felt overpowered these fucking sleeps, man. So... I don't know. Like, I was really impressed by that backline. I think I shouldn't underestimate OG's help in keeping Ultraviolet alive.
Yep.
But in general,
that's where.
Yeah, keep on.
I will say, like, having written something about them, like, initially, like, to peek behind the curtain for a second, Yiska kind of approached me and was like, yo, like, Kai's getting a lot of love, like, you should write about him. I'm like, all right, let me do some deep dive. Like, let me look at these games. I'm like, bro, it's hard to, like, I kind of just want to write about UV. I kind of want to just write about how good Hawk was. I kind of want to write about how good OG was. It's like this team in general played the Florida Mayhem, who I rate quite highly, versus the community. They played New York, whom whatever, my take on them is pretty mid. But in general, like, they looked to be one of the better teams in terms of like a view of form, because of how much, like, how right everything was, right? Like, Nero looked fabulous, had on a number of different picks. Hawk looked, I think, like the best Doomfist that we've seen. Granted, it's 1 week, but if you had to put a crown on somebody, I think it's Hawk.
I mean, Houston fans are coming for you.
Sure. Tell Dante to slow it down. I don't know. Play a little bit slower. Find some success there, and then we can talk. Atlanta made adaptations after one map. We saw it on our co-stream. Avra pointed out that Hawk is like very focused and is doing a fuckload of damage, but he's only targeting someone, the main tank of Florida Mayhem. Then you see it immediately change in map 2. Like, it was very comfortable. It felt very comfortable for them to be able to shift things on the fly and find what works for them in this particular matchup to throw, the Mayhem off, whether that be, more aggressive backline pressure, whether it be spacing UV a little bit farther apart to, threaten some sort of dive interception. A lot of teams going through some of these week 1 games, it feels like there is a separation between the class of people who are playing a very not a counter dive, but like pressuring the tank through using your Winston bubble to separate the tank away from the Ana, trying to separate those sightlines, or playing for the enemy Ana, trying to create those dives and get that tail end, like Yiska saying. And it felt like Atlanta did have a more fluid approach to that. It wasn't just very rigid and we only do it this way or we only do it that way. They kind of played it by ear, and it looked very, very coordinated.
Yeah.
It looked great.
I mean, thinking back now, you saw the CarQ tweet, we saw the Ultraviolet comment as well. It's like, the supports are strong and it's fucking insane. I think for a lot of people, even me a little bit, I'm like, I bought it, but I didn't like cash it in straight away. I was just like, I buy it, but like, we'll see a little bit. We'll wait till the game. We'll have to see what it does.
Yeah.
And then boom, we see the actual matchup, and it's like, holy shit, Ultraviolet's doing everything. Like, he was doing so much. I think after the second map, after map 2, after Nightwald, I tweeted, I was like, bro, give this guy POTG. It's done. It's finished. Give it to him now. Like, it's enough. Then after the match finished, I was like, I need to make a video now. I just made a video on Ultraviolet and Ana straight away, because I was like, this is crazy. I spent my whole night making that video. In hindsight, I probably should have waited, because the next day, Iris, or as he's called now, Iris, went absolute ham versus Dallas, and he did the exact same thing, and maybe even better in that particular game. It's definitely him and Ultraviolet right now that are the most impressive on that role, where the level of sleeps they were hitting, oh man, Iris hit some crazy sleeps. Just all these nano blades and these visors and these other just normal blades that just completely get removed from a single sleep. And you look at Sparkle's POV, he's like shaking his head like, man, what is happening? Like, I can't even play the game. People were like, oh man, Sparkle underperformed, he didn't do anything. I was like, yeah, because Eris slept him every single time. Like, what do you want my guy to do? Like, he got out, they all got outplayed by other people on that team. So Ultraviolet, Eris, Ana in general has been crazy. So that Bionane nerf, it desperately needs to come through. I don't know when we're going to be on the new patch, but that Bionane nerf, like losing 1 second down, even that, like that'll help. That'll do something.
It definitely will help.
And then having some competition from Zen to actually compete with Ana. Maybe they'll be played together, but I think Lucio is still a bit too good to not have right now.
That's question though, which is good.
That'll be really good. So I remember we obviously co-streamed the Atlanta Mayhem game. That was a lot of fun. Super impressed with Atlanta right now. I'm actually I probably need to address the fact that I underrated Nero quite a bit, and he came out impressed. I'll be straight about it. He definitely looked a lot better than I expected. And not just on, because the thing is, I always thought Nero was more like, oh, he'll play some funny heroes. He'll play Torb's like one of his main heroes.
Yeah.
He's like a Torb Reaper May 3 trick. Like, what are you gonna get out of Nero? Then he comes out this weekend, brings out a Genji and a Tracer and dominates. I'm like, holy shit, this guy can like really do some stuff. And that Tracer as well, like he destroyed Myeongbong with it time and time again.
Yeah,
Pulse
just
bombs.
sat on him, dude.
He actually gave me a bit of hope that maybe Tracer could come back into the meta. Because I thought Tracer got hard locked out of the meta because of Genji Soldier, but now with Soldier nerfed, like maybe she could come back in.
I think she has a place right now.
That New York game is, but she could probably have a more of a place. We'll see.
Oh, agreed.
She's in an okay place, but only you'll probably see her play rate go up now. But anyway, what was I saying? Nero destroying Myeongbong, and people are like, man, Myeongbong sucks. But so there's two things there. One is that it's New York getting diffed and gapped by a team much better than them. The second thing is it's Atlanta's strategy and their entire modus operandi of like just diving Ana. There is a reason why Nero and the rest of the team runs at Myeongbong time and time and time again, because it's established from the Atlanta Reign playbook that they run at Anas. That's what they do. They see an Ana on the field and they fucking sprint at this motherfucker as quick as they can. That's their playbook. So yeah, I mean, it's New York had no idea what to do against that. Jed got shut down hard as well. You see, after map 1, you brought this up, but I mentioned, Hawk was spending a lot of time addressing someone. And I was like, during that map, I'm like, he's spending too much time looking at this Winston. He needs to do something else. Map 2, he starts looking at Majed. And as soon as he starts looking at Majed, the game changes because UV does not have the same pressure. Majed is constantly under pressure. He's spending his whole game trying to sleep, bionate, and defend himself against Hawk. Meanwhile, Ultraviolet's there just playing, I don't know, he's playing
point and click
simulator where he had no pressure on him. He was doing whatever the fuck he wanted. And credit to Atlanta for setting up that situation, but there's a huge difference when your Ana player gets to dominate and just have full sight lines and control the game, and the opposing Ana player is just under the fist of Hawk's Doom the whole way through. But that's exactly how Atlanta play, and they get a lot of success out of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, they do. And it works like it is the playbook, I think, for Doom comps right now is to look at exactly what, granted it's hard to mirror the skill 1-to-1, but like if you want to like play a good Doom, that's what you should be doing. Credit to Florida as well. I saw some interesting looks out of them. I think there were some more creative takes. I think week 1 in general for them was quite creative with their illegal maneuvers and their Roadhog plays. Maybe not necessarily hitting the mark, but it shows a lot when compared to some other teams who are very much like rigid. They seem very fluid and still can hang with the best of them on some of these traditional, well, I guess what will probably become traditional, Soldier Genji picks. Checkmate looking great. Someone stalks upwards. General, it was a great game. Florida Atlanta, super, super good.
I think legitimately after this match specifically, seeing how good Hawk is on Doom, seeing how Nero holds up, and then everyone else being able to play like their sort of best heroes. Otherwise, Kai, I say sorta, but yeah, like it's just a hit scan lord.
Yeah,
bro, this is a favorite. If we don't go to like a new patch, or the meta changes violently, unless those things happen, I think Atlanta has to be considered one of the favorites based on what we've seen, just because like a lot of the question marks surrounding like the volatile hero picks in terms of Doomfist and especially Genji have been pretty much answered. And if they can keep doing that, I don't know. Like I feel like every other top team has given me more question marks than Atlanta did.
Joe, you got a game?
Agreed. I do. And it was one that gave me some hope for a particular style. Viewers of the show and maybe some regulars in the Discord will know that I molded to no end when any team locked Zarya. And there was one team in particular that may surprise you, as clickbait as that sounds. I will take the Boston Uprising versus the Los Angeles Gladiators. I don't know why I was about to call them Florida. As my game of the week, because it showcased a very, I think, what is the blueprint on how Zarya compositions probably should be played at the moment. We saw teams like Dallas. We saw teams, I think, was it Florida or Paris? I can't remember, to be honest. But I know that Dallas and Boston in general played a lot of Zarya. Those are the two teams I think that had probably the most playtime. And you saw some very clear different looks, right? You saw a lot of the Reaper pairing with Boston and showcasing how much anti-tank they were playing, keeping Reinhardt off the team. Very coordinated rotations. Their leapfrog was fantastic. Whereas Dallas, it was a little slower. Again, AVRL talks about like this weird Freaky Friday situation where the team that invented this Lucio Moira Reaper rushdown style is now playing in a train car, getting punched out the side of it, and is just kind of standing there like not knowing what to do with their hands. It was very, very confusing, especially looking at, how Rush has had his career set up and the players that they have and how good they are at playing high tempo. It was very, very confusing. And even some of their later games in the week against the Justice, I don't think gave me that much more hope, if I'm being completely honest. And yeah, I really, really loved what I saw out of Boston. I think running with that for them going forward into the kickoff clash could be a pretty sizable problem for teams. I think there is some serious consistency issues when you look at, the Vancouver game versus the Gladiators game. But I genuinely wonder how many times you run that Boston game against Gladiators, like 99 times. I wonder if people would be surprised at how many times Boston genuinely wins some of those maps and maybe even wins the match. I think the Zarya pick was fantastic. That's the only team, I mentioned this on Twitter, that I trust running Zarya compositions at the moment, because I don't really care to see Toronto run it. I don't really care to see Dallas run it anymore, if I'm to be completely honest. I think they need to kind of like take a step back to move forward. And yeah, I think that like they're leading the charge in this like weird offshoot meta school of thought that I'm all for. Definitely a more creative person, and I like the look. I like it a lot.
I don't mind the Zarya, but the part of the Boston equation I have a problem with is the D.Va. Yes. I don't think D.Va should be run at all, personally.
Agreed.
I think D.Va just currently does less than Winston and Doom.
Yes.
In all applications. And that's kind of an issue with hero pools sometimes, because you want to run Punk because he's probably your best tank player, but his hero pool is like D.Va Zarya, right, or Sigma. Yep. So he's got the classic off tank hero pool, and so what you end up seeing is It's all comes in to play the Winston.
Yeah.
And I think I'll give Boston credit. I think they're a better team than people give them credit for, which is why people are kind of be like, "Oh, well, Gladiators don't look very good because they dropped the map to Boston." I'm like, yeah, but maybe Boston aren't as bad as you think. Like that could be the case too. I mean, Valentine is really good, and people are like, "Oh yeah, but Boston nearly lost to Vancouver." Like, I don't know. Like, I also think Vancouver were better than what they displayed in the London game. I expected more out of Vancouver in that London game, so I give Vancouver a little bit of benefit of the doubt. Yeah, teams can definitely dip and rise in different performances, and that's why you can't make any sweeping judgments off of one game alone. Yeah. But look, that Glads Boston game, I kind of already talked about it. That was the game that I watched that felt like, man, this control. I mean, I kind of felt that way from most of the control maps, but that's one where I just kind of like it clicked for me. I was like, control really is hard to watch. But that Gibraltar game was really fun because you got to see not quite pecans, but as close as pecans as we'd ever seen, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That's the closest thing we've ever had to pecans since we had pecans in 2020. He was nailing shots left and right. He was insanely impactful. Completely destroyed Victoria.
Yep.
And the rest of Boston along with it. Like you couldn't get past him. Arns was at one point, what was the stat line? He was 7-0 I think he was actually 9-0 at one point. 9 kills, 9 final blows, 0 deaths. You know, just dismantling the other team. Unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal scenes.
Gladiators
So,
have some weapons.
and so everyone's like, oh, you know, I don't know about Patty. I don't know about Arns. I'm like, again, only one of them needs to pop off. One of them is popping off. I think Patty is still fine. It looks like he's maybe dealing with some confidence issues because he's being pretty hard on himself. And they're actually running him on Genji instead of Kevster for the most part, which I found a little surprising. I thought Kevster would be the Genji player and Patty would be your soldier player. And
But
they
you
did
saw
that
kind of
for,
a swap on Ike, right? I think you're head.
we did. And I'm like, I'm still trying to figure out why the swap happened. It's either because Kevster wanted to swap to Kevster has the option of Tracer, so they can do maybe a soldier Tracer is what they wanted, or, and here's a take. I don't know if this is a take. Here's a speculation. Maybe Patty lost confidence on the Genji, and he's like, Kev, I think you need to swap with me. I can't do this. I can't do the Genji right now. You got to swap with me. Because I'd heard that Patty had played soldier in scrims too. So I mean, they've definitely done that. So I mean,
it didn't look bad. Like his soldier genuinely looked good when they did swap. Like it was fine. Like there was no like love lost when it came to that. But yeah, I think these first couple games for Glads, Patty definitely a little feast or famine. Like moments where, okay, cool. Like we got that Genji unlock. It's very tight.
Genji is feast or famine, just to be clear as well.
Yeah.
Agreed. I think in general, there were some very odd moments where there was a little too much limit testing going on. Some early deaths, some needless deaths where it's like, okay, I think you guys have the advantage, but you're kind of just grading for more. And that's where Patty kind of like fell a little short for me. But I think that's very fixable. Like that is something that can be very easily fixed. And I think once we get into previews, I think some people might be interested on my view on them. But we will see. So far, so good for Glads. Some things to fix. I like where I'm at with Boston, or I like what I saw with Boston. I'd like to see less swaps if I had to make a stand. But there again, maps are a bitch. I don't know. Maybe that's like a tangent, but I'm really frustrated with pick'ems because I want to see these maps because I feel like it dictates a lot of like how some of these games are going to go, where it's like, cool, if London doesn't get any good like close maps, then what the fuck are they going to do? Or like if Gladiators gets like, you know, a map that they can throw in ons extra, then sick. Like they have another weapon to use, right? Like it changes your predictions a little bit. And I don't know. I wish we got maps a little bit earlier personally, but I take.
So outside of that, we also had our circle of 4 teams beating each other. This is again why it can be quite hard to draw conclusions this early on. Like I even think doing another power ranking now is just not even feasible. Like how? Like I mean, everyone's just we don't even have a clear meta. Is it like are you supposed to play Winston or Doom or Zarya? Like people are still figuring that out. We're now confused about whether we should be playing Genji or an Echo. Like what is that?
Sure.
What part? What's going on there? You know, everyone's beating everyone. Not everyone, but a lot of teams are beating each other. So specifically, we're talking about the fact that Washington beats Toronto, and then Washington loses to Dallas, who loses to Houston, who then loses to Toronto. So, and it goes in a big circle. So what does that mean? Like you can't even realistically draw too many conclusions for that. I think the one conclusion I will draw is that teams like Dallas, who look really shaky on their day one, came back very quickly and bounced back for their second match. And I would even maybe extend that olive branch to Toronto as well. Looked shaky in their opening game versus Washington, came back, looked much stronger.
Oh yeah. Different team.
Especially for finale.
Oh yeah.
Where finale versus Washington, my God, he was like straight up feeding at certain points. They were just because I reviewed that game, and he like the amount of first deaths he had was pretty egregious. But then even how he was dying was totally preventable. It wasn't like, oh man, Arns just headshot me. What can you do? You know?
Right? Yeah.
It was like, why are you standing there? Like you're trying to get killed, and then you do get killed. Like what are you doing? And Toronto just slow and decisive. Like I don't know, it's just weird. But then I still need to catch up on the Toronto Houston game. But I heard finale was pogging out.
Extremely good.
Yeah, I heard he was brilliant. So
yes, that Queen Street was it? Yeah, it was Queen Street. Queen Street in general, the Tracer. I think that was like the map that like solidified Tracer's like situation in the meta for me, where it's like it's not as good as Genji, sure, but like the things that it gives you, the backline pressure, even trying to use it as tank busting on these more flank oriented flat maps, I think it is a very viable pick and is something that I think you're going to see an increase on. And then for Houston, I think it was a mix of a lot of things. I think Toronto played very, very well. It was a different team entirely. I think they adapted to Houston playing a little too overly aggressive and chipping away at Pelican and really review, like, if anything, I think looking at that Ilios in general and watching how low everybody is for 99% of the time, like Dante's permanently low. Pelican's like zoned off the map, like at 50 HP, like flying around trying to find value. What like Toronto was able to do from a few days of like mental prep, I don't even know. Like it was very, very good. Definitely a level up.
I felt like the Pelican Echo should be punished.
Yes.
And I'd have an argument with someone in my stream about this as well. It was like, dude, who would play Genji? Genji is so rubbish. Everyone should be playing Echo. I'm like, should they? Because Echo just dies to Soldier. You know what I mean? Like, and you can't just use this one Houston game as like empirical evidence. Like, oh yeah, because Pelican came on at Echo, she's the best hero now. It's fucking Pelican. He's like one of, if not the best Echo player anyway. Like, not every team can just do that. But even then, like theoretically, the Echo should, you know, you're playing a straight flying hero in a heavy soldier meta. Like, what do you think's going to happen? Like, the soldiers should just destroy you. Like in the Ana, even if they look at you. So you have to be. It should be quite hard to play Echo in that meta, which is why Yaki only found limited success, and he's a pretty decent Echo, but he only found limited success, and Pelican maybe finally got punished a little bit.
Yes.
And then, you know, I kind of memed about it already, but then there's the whole Dante Doom tank thing where, you know, people 180 flipped from, oh man, the best Doom ever, and, you know, wow, Dante's invincible, to like, oh my god, they can't keep doing this. They got to put piggyback in. Dante needs to play something else now. It's like, man, you guys knee-jerked really fucking hard on that one, didn't you?
I think you hit the nail on the head there, bringing these two things together, because it ultimately led to Houston's demise against Toronto, right? Like Dante requires Iris's attention like almost all the time. And then you have Toronto playing a little slower. They're trying to catch this Dante engage, bubbling him off so Iris can't heal him. Then you have Pelican at 50 HP flying around trying to play for a health pack. I feel bad for this kid trying to heal his goddamn team because everybody's low all the time and you just see them crumble slowly but surely, losing all the space, losing control. We talk about push, but control in very much the same way. Having that first fight win, having that first touch, it does do a lot of like good for you leading through that submap. Like it is very important to win that first touch. And Toronto was there. They looked fantastic. Everybody was playing well. That backline, I don't know that I would agree that, you know, they got diffed. I think that was just a poor performance for them against Washington, but like it came alive. You saw Chorong and all of his fat wallet. You know, Twilight looking like what we know him to be. Finale impressing on the Tracer. The Genji also wasn't that bad. Like, it was a good game. Houston just has to... It was a little late for them to adapt to the adaptation, but they have to, like, look at that map and kind of reverse engineer it coming into week 2, or they're gonna face some issues.
We know Yiska's got something banked up about Houston.
I mean...
Come on. Let him have it.
Okay, so I felt pretty confident about this being a close match, even after what we saw on day one. I think it's a reality of especially early meta iterations that you, more so than power rankings or power levels or tiers, you have specific matchups interacting with one another differently, right? So while I don't necessarily think it doesn't say anything about the relative quality of the teams and makes a tell about where they should be, it more so communicates who plays into who well, right? And The difference, I don't think necessarily that Houston just forgot how to play Overwatch 2 overnight. I think this is a legitimate step up from the Defiant. That's one thing.
Yeah.
And it is also just how they played into each other. So Finale, I think, stepped up. I think that backline, man, like, they looked bad against Justice. Honestly, like, we were talking about it, but I'm not sure if diffing is the right term here, but like, Krillin
that team
and
just played poorly.
Krillin and Opener didn't look worse than Twilight Chirong in that game for that one match, right?
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree.
But there are reasons why that is, right? And how people play into each other. So, yeah, I still felt pretty confident having had some of the scrim information. And I will say here, full transparency, Toronto wasn't doing well in the week before the start of the league. They feel like a very on and off team. And I feel like we got an on and off team this weekend.
Yes.
Well, we certainly saw both sides, didn't we? We saw the off, and we saw the on.
Yeah.
And when they were on, I guess they're really, really on. Because when they're off, talking back on the Chirong Twilight, I expect that to be one of the best backlines in the entire league. And yet, Krillin and Opener looked as good, if not better. Yeah, and that's probably because Chirong Twilight probably didn't play that well. But everyone thought Opener was going to be garbage, and he actually looked pretty decent. He looked more than serviceable. He looked definitely reasonable. Krillin actually impressed a lot. Krillin was hitting some nasty shots. I was like, wow, Krillin's doing, Krillin doing some stuff, in that Washington game. So, I even, this is, and I didn't actually have the Scrimbux on this, but from what I had seen in the alpha, I expected Assassin to play Genji over Decay because Assassin really impressed me in the alpha. But obviously, Decay came out and played, and he looked good. He's Decay did the carry things. Mag came back, and you interviewed Mag afterwards as well. I think, I don't know if it's like, oh, is Mag back now? But, certainly it's not the sad state of what we saw last year as far as Mag's personal performance goes. Yeah. So there was a lot of stuff happening, and then that was reasonable for the Justice. I didn't catch the Dallas Justice game, but I have to assume, Dallas woke the fuck up and just play like Dallas you'd expect them to play.
Yeah, for sure. No.
And definitely in some ways, for sure.
I will say, like, if that backline can keep it up, I think I undervalued Justice this season, man. I think they
pump the brakes on me.
I think like that DPS line is still pretty cracked. I think we saw Happy playing up to his potential. Man, Decay still ain't washed. He's still doing his Decay things.
Agreed there.
If Mac can then stay on the Doom like he did, and like vibe with the team in the way he did, then I think this is like, yeah, man, you can lose against Dallas. Once again, I fully expect that Dallas will be a top 3 team in NA when the stage is done. I saw nothing this weekend that would indicate otherwise. So, yeah, I think I don't remember where I put Justice, but I feel like it was pretty low, and therefore, I think that's one of the teams that I will have to course correct on in my predictions on. Because in my mind, if this team was ever going to cause waves, it was probably going to require Vigilante to come in later in the season. Apparently, that wasn't required. So, we're good for now.
If Krillin keeps us up, they might not need him anymore. They might not need Vigilante. Krillin might just be better.
Well.
I was super impressed.
Agreed there.
I had Justice, I think, 8th place in A.
Where did I have them?
13 global, 8th in A. So Outlaws 5, Defiant 6, Mayhem 7, Justice 8. I don't think that's an unfair place to put them. Obviously, they beat Defiant, so they beat a team a couple ranks higher, at least in my standings, in my power rankings. But everyone's kind of beating everyone a little bit right now, in most cases.
Yep. I think I'm happy where Justice are at right now. Definitely some positive performance, but I need specifically one thing to change, and we will get to that in the preview.
Any final comments about Scrimbux or how that's kind of panned out now that we've seen a week of gameplay? how does everyone feel about all the different takes and rankings and Scrimbux exchanges about how we thought it was going to happen versus what actually happened.
I can't wait for this this charlatan to continue to try and peddle some weird NFT bullshit as we get deeper into the league. I hope those Scrimbux are continuing to flow. You're going to get outpaced.
Is this where you're trying to like egg me on to have the same reaction I had prior to the broadcast, and I completely pop off on people just making way too early conclusions because they just like to shit on Scrimbux?
Nobody's making too early conclusions, but reading the tea leaves, I don't know.
That's hook, line, sinker, dude. Like how this is. I understand that there's a certain like there's a reason to hate Scrimbux. I don't want shit to be predetermined. I don't want like to not understand or like to not have access to them week to week where I could have more insight, and that feels sort of like an elitist thing to talk about. At the same time, I see all you motherfuckers putting like New York in the bottom 3 of like your power rankings based on your on paper estimation of Yaki, Kellen, fucking Flora, and then tell me you didn't take Scrimbux into account. You're drinking the Kool-Aid the entire time, my best dudes, while telling me it's so that this tastes like shit. I can't believe how bad Scrimbux was. Come on, man. You're drinking it all the time, and especially the NYXL take. How did that turn out? Did they play like their on paper strings, or did they play like their Scrimbux take?
Oh, they played like exactly how we all thought they would.
Based on what?
Based on
what, Joe?
No, there's nothing wrong with using a little Scrimbux and using a little bit of your eye test and using some common sense and going, wow, look, like we have a nice even prediction.
Yeah.
But when you have assistant coaches cooking their own books and saying, oh yeah, we're actually being competitive with the chalk. It's actually fantastic. So I don't know where you're going to do. Make sure to put that in your article. Make sure to put that into the ether that we're keeping even with the San Francisco Shock and in the Dallas Fuel.
Yeah, no.
We're actually coming close to that.
Yeah, the thing is, you can't take the opinion of the coaches of their own teams as much. You can corroborate the information of what you've been given, right? I would say, like, yes, NYXL is a team that can absolutely like go up because their on paper strength is higher, right? I'm saying like there are very real reasons, some of which we have seen with the Vulcan signing that was very clearly like an indication of them having issues with visas and getting quality practice time, and all of that is manifesting. And I honestly think they even overperformed their situation, mainly also because they tried to get something innovative out of the gate. I think like what probably would have happened if they had just played meta, I think there's a disjointed mess between Kellen and Yaki happening. The Echo sort of forces a unified tempo that feedback loop of that unified tempo is like, if you don't, like, Yaki can't go in by himself as Echo. That's not a thing, right? You need the bubbles, you need the coordination and whatnot, right? So in that, I thought it was a very smart adjustment. I honestly think like I think what I wrote in the stock exchange became sort of more true. More so than what I said on TCP about their Scrimbux, which was like they're the worst team at the moment. In the stock exchange, I said like they are doing decently against the bottom tier, and I still stand that they would probably be beating the Titans, the Spitfire.
Oh, for sure.
They probably would beat the Eternal. They would probably beat.
Here we go.
Boston.
The next team is Uprising, so you have to
maybe Boston.
Well,
that's a good match at least, right?
Game. Yeah, it's a decent game.
So we're out of the woeful territory, at least for me. I'm not sure where your
they're in the mid.
applying.
They've entered mid. Like I said, they're mid team.
Yeah, they're the mid. So I feel like that in itself is a take that held up. I think now at the same time, I fully conclude or confess it's way too early to tell, but just like on the level of play that they've demonstrated, I think the Scrimbux Stock Exchange didn't say that Fuel was still dominating the meta. That was a thing that I said on TCP, I think 2 weeks before the Stock Exchange came out.
Yeah.
Right? Where a new meta developed. And, I mean, my dudes, we're playing Genji. Of course, Sparkle is going to pound some butts the instant he gets to touch that, right? Like, you got to keep up on that.
Pounder.
So, okay, let me actually see. Okay, where Scrimbux failed was probably Spitfire. I didn't see them stomping Titans, and I feel like there's now also in how they portray themselves against the Shock. I feel like there is a tier break between those teams. Even though I will say Titans also had a little bit more say in the Uprising series, of course. Maybe they just totally underperformed there. But I feel like given the performance we saw of all of those teams, there's probably a different tier break than the Stock Exchange was making. I feel like the Stock Exchange got Justice a little bit wrong, but not overly so. Keep in mind, I don't think the way the Stock Exchange works is, of course, you do not have direct scrim comparisons between the teams that are actually playing each other in week 1. They're actively avoiding each other in order to save strategies, right?
Yeah, of course.
So the most relevant data, especially while the meta is still volatile, is missing prior. But the relative strength of those teams over like the entire field, those are being ranked. And a team in a particular matchup punching up 1 tier is not of particular importance to me. I think the Outlaws winning against Fuel, Outlaws were tier 2 in terms of like they were the most one of the 2 teams that were the most likely to get into the top 5. Even though I said Toronto was probably going to be it. You be the judge if that held up. And then
no, you be the judge. How do you feel on that take? Do you feel like that was accurate?
I feel like it's too early to tell.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, by beating the Outlaws, they've at least established that they're, not totally outranked in that situation, right? They could still there's still a probability that they are in the tier that I ascribed to them. I think the most likely situation is that the Justice joins those 2 teams in that tier. And the other upset was what was the other thing?
Houston Dallas.
Houston Dallas and Justice. Those were teams that punched up 1 tier. That, like, on a sample size of 2 doesn't say anything about Scrimbux. Maybe the order of which Outlaws did it to Fuel is something that should be of note, and that's probably also a stronger case. I think the way Fuel rebounded and Outlaws played against a Defiant sort of relativizes that point. I think we need more data points. But if you guys keep like tweeting some garbage about Scrimbux, every time you do that, I become more obnoxious. I'm weaponizing retweets this season. I'm doing it. You keep increasing my power. See you in the QRTs.
This is where you think you're in control, right? Like you understand that we want that, right? As a man of the people, I will tell you, we want you to be obnoxious. We want you to gloat because it's a vicious cycle. When you gloat and eventually get it wrong, like you did with APAC last year, then it comes to bite you, and then we get it in return. It's a never-ending cycle of hatred and love. It's fantastic.
See, the problem in all of this is my self-conception is absolutely counterproductive because I'm a person that inherently wants to be loved by everyone while pissing off everyone. Those are incentive structures that inherently can't work. No. So you're just going to make me sad, but I guess it's for the greater good. And if you need a pundit villain, I guess I'm just going to
You know what?
become a Irvin and be a demon.
You can achieve that with a lot of money.
True.
You know, you can hate everyone, but still have everyone love you if you just have a lot of money. Anyway, I look at, as we round out the end of this, I look at Scrimbux as kind of just, you know, a tool to set some expectations, and otherwise just to, I don't know, have fun. I think some people probably take it too seriously, and
Yeah.
that's where the trouble comes in from. Like, you know, guys, at the end of the day, you know, it's just a laugh. You know, just have a bit of a laugh.
It is a laugh.
It's an informative piece. It is very useful.
But I would say more so than the Scrimbux preseason. I think this is the one thing that I can legitimately say, and every coach, probably but Rush, will tell you this. Everyone takes scrims very seriously. Everyone tries to win scrim maps. Some teams will tilt and then starts throwing. But overall, scrim map win rate very closely maps season standings at the end of the season. There are some outliers, but the norm is that if you were to compare scrim win rates against the relevant Overwatch League franchises, also you would have to calculate their, you know, masses and their selections and blah 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 blah, because like some teams don't scrim others because they're too terrible and whatnot, right? But if you all mapped it out and balanced it correctly, I promise you would have a very strong predictor on on the season outcome. And if you're a better, there's no better source for you making massive money than getting your hands on scrim win rates. That would be literally your holy grail, and you were going to become a millionaire. Like,
agreed.
Well, if people are betting enough money for you to get the wins, but yeah, or if you were betting enough money for the odds. But the point is, I think some people look at Scrimbux as not a predictor, but like a literal fucking crystal ball. You know what I'm saying?
Like a truth-telling machine.
This is not a 100%, you know, truth rate or whatever the fuck, 100% accuracy. Or you know, you can't use it all. Here's the thing: I don't buy Scrimbux 100% because no one should. But I also don't buy any sort of talk where there's definitely some people, even like, you know, people that are in every other way respectable, that'll say like, oh no, you can't trust Scrimbux. Like, you trusting Scrimbux is a mistake. You know, those things aren't. You know, you can't bank on that. I'm like, you can't entirely ignore it either, because like you said, like they are a predictor. Like, generally speaking, they will give you pretty accurate expectations about what can and will happen. So while you shouldn't believe it 100%, you also can't ignore it 100% either. It's got to exist in there somewhere. So in my experience in esports, scrim results have definitely translated to real results as well. But you know, there will be and will continue to be situations where teams will overperform or underperform for whatever given reason. Like, I'm sure, and that was proven when you look at where Dallas were. They shat the bed versus Houston, then came back really strong versus Washington. And before anyone's like, oh yeah, but it's just Washington. But it's like, yeah, but this entire circular suck started because teams will over and underperform. You know, these things are natural and they will happen. And that doesn't mean that invalidates Scrimbux. It just means on the day, someone can shit the bed, or someone could get, you know, they could get really nervous, or anything could happen. So
also, realistically, don't underestimate my blind spots. I don't have perfect like Excel sheet access for every single team where I could corroborate the exact number of wins. No, there's some teams I don't have any connection to.
Sure.
There's some teams, of course, it's way harder to keep track of APAC, right? It's there's game of telephone going on where I'm being told stuff that then down the line becomes less and less true. So more so than what scrim performance is, also consider that there's a definite loss in translation as it comes to me, and then how I interpret these. Because once again, like, this is also going through the filter of like Yiska understanding what people tell me. And if you mean that Scrimbux in that sense are unreliable, I have less beef with you than you saying scrim, whatever people do in scrims is not
So
representative.
the end takeaway is New York probably did as well as I thought they would. Vancouver, London probably did as well as I thought they would. I actually had London above Vancouver, so I'll take that W. Everybody else, I think it's all fine. Like, yeah, okay, I'll put Fuel NA number 1, World number 1, whatever. Most people, pretty much everyone put Fuel NA number 1, so I feel like that's not out of the question. I feel like the only thing that really changed for me was, Outlaws and Outlaws in particular really impressed a lot more than I expected. Rain impressed more. I'd probably move Rain a couple places up right now, even above Shock. Maybe that'll change when Shock plays some better teams. So, yeah, I don't think I had too many major surprises from this opening weekend. What about you guys as we finish up now? This will be the last thing we talk about.
Surprising. Strategically, I didn't think there was going to be like a reliance on Soldier Genji, right? I think, on our preview, we talked about it being like the North Star, and I took that to heart as like, yes, like that is going to be like the lion's share of playtime, but like we should see some other stuff. We should see maybe some Tracer, maybe some Winston, maybe some Doomfist. Like there should be like a very, sizable pool of heroes that can be played. And that expectation was definitely shattered with how much, Zarya was played, how much, Reinhardt is seeing some use, right? It's not a lot, but it's very interesting. And when it comes out, Doomfist, the Diva, I'm less interested in seeing, but there is, some playtime there. Yeah, I think that would probably be my one takeaway. That surprised me was just how many heroes we got to see, and hopefully that continues for the most part. I could see less Hog and Junk, but that's just me.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. 2, 3, 1. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. It was a good show. That does it for our North America region previews. So, guys, now let's get into our APAC previews.